Teddy,
Hey,
thanks for joining me again.
yeah, my pleasure.
How you
My
doing?
pleasure. I'm doing okay. You get a little tired coming from New York to Saudi Arabia. It's a little bit of a travel, but we're we're blessed. We're fortunate that people want us here. I always appreciate that, and I always appreciate being around good people, and I appreciate being able to travel with my son because that to have those kind of experiences together and share them is special. Not everyone gets those opportunities. So I always take the time to think about what I should be appreciative of. And I'm appreciative that I can be here for such a historic card.
Mm.
And that's gotta be up your alley because you like history,
Yeah.
of the sport. And I'm glad we have someone young in this sport that's both passionate about the sport, and that's why I'm glad to make time for you. That first of all, you're a gentleman, but somebody that's both passionate about the sport and knowing of the sport and the history of the sport, that's important to me. I just did an interview for Ring Magazine. That's important to me because you need someone and something to be able to both store and then deliver the history
Mm.
to people, to young people, to all people. But I want the young people to know about this sport because I always get upset that there's no real conveyors of the history out there like there are in the other sports. I mean, baseball is so available. Basketball, the history is available. It's there's a lot of platforms to get it. You know, in football, American football, same thing. The history is available. Boxing, it's not available. It's just not accessible to people, to the youth, and they don't know. A lot of the kids there know a lot of the great old baseball players or great old basketball players or football players. And I know the history of those sports aren't as old as this sport,
Mm.
but that's my point. This sport, boxing, is the oldest sport of any sport. And the history should be out there of these great fighters, what they overcame, what they had to go through to get to where they got to. So it's important for me to take the time to talk to people like you. You're important. You're a messenger. You're a Johnny Appleseed. You're one. No, you are. You're one of those. Don't ever minimize your importance. You're one of those people that are planting seeds that need to be grown for people again to understand more about this sport. Not that you have to force it down their throat; they have to like boxing, but they should be able to understand the specialness of the people from the different eras in the sport, how they became successful,
Mm.
how they pulled themselves up from the depths of places that they came from, and that can help people to know what they overcame. When you think you're having, trouble and problems, when you can look back on some of the people in the sport, uh, and in this sport in particular, and see what they went through and see what they overcame.
Mm.
I always say life is a fight. So what better? What better sport? Think about it.
Yeah.
To attach yourself to again to make the history available to you, than the history of boxing to help you with your own fight in life.
Yeah. You know what? I think people want to know. I just don't think there's enough people, good people out there putting it out there. And I often get criticised, not criticised, but accused of being biased towards the old fighters. People say, how can you be so, how could they be the greatest with all of the modern technology and advancements we've had? But I say, like, someone like a Sam Langford, a Harry Greb that we spoke about before, their achievements, they've never been mimicked. No one's ever come close to mimicking the lightweight to
And then
heavyweight
Henry
run.
Armstrong, guys like that, after that.
Yeah.
But all those guys, and you can make an argument because there'll never be another era like that. Some of those guys had 200 pro fights, 300 pro fights. You got a guy like Harry Greb who fought 100 fights with one eye. So, yeah, you talk about overcoming something. You talk
Yeah.
about not complaining. You talk about not making excuses.
Yeah.
So you can learn, you can glean something from these men, and to me, the argument falls a little bit short and deaf on my ears to them, where they say, how can you argue for the greatness of those fighters compared to the modern era when the modern era, they have so many advantages, with training methods, with science, with nutrition, so that's exactly why I argue they were better. They didn't have that.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
They had to achieve what they had to achieve without the benefit of those supplements, those things. They had to find a way. They had to be stronger here.
Mm.
They had less options, less help in certain areas. And when you have less options, what is the option? To depend on yourself from within.
Yeah.
And that's what really made these guys great, is that they found out they could depend on themselves from within. And they wouldn't have been forced to find that out if they had things that were a little easier, to get through things. So you can learn a lot from them. And again, you're never going to have errors like that where there's fighters fighting. I mean, Henry Armstrong 1 year fought like 35 times. That's a career. That's a career, and all tough fights. And that's another thing. They not only fought 200, 300 fights, but they fought all top guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where today, let's just use an arbitrary example of a number. Let's say a guy's got, say he's 25-0. I guarantee you, 20 of those guys were probably, might have been with the doorman
Yeah.
over here, where they weren't fighting caliber guys. But if you had a guy when he was 25-0, or maybe 30-0, let's say, back in the era we're talking about, I guarantee you he's already fought top guys.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't be 30-0 because he fought top guys.
Yeah.
So that's another thing. It wasn't a death sentence back then to lose a fight. What it really was kind of the test of fire. It was kind of what you had to go through, the trials you had to go through to become that great fighter. By fighting good guys, losing some fights, but winning by losing, by learning what you had to learn, by again being forged in the fire. Where today, really, guys go out of their way, managers go, and it's the way of the day. I get why they do it. To manipulate a guy, to maneuver a guy around tough fights, to get him to the big fight, to get the title. And really what you're doing, and that'll be my biggest argument why that ever is in a lot of ways greater than this ever. And I'm taking nothing away from the great fighters of this ever. We have some great fighters. But what I'm saying is that they were given what they needed to be given in a way that we think it's the opposite today. They were given the tough fights to find out how good they were, because you can't find out how great you are until you fight great fighters. You're not forced to go to that extra place until that happens. And back in that day, they were always forced to go to that place. So whatever greatness was in them, it came out. And it came out at an earlier stage where it could develop. Today, you avoid the possibility of that. You actually go out of your way to say, I know this sounds crazy, but to make the point, you go out of your way to say, I'm going to make sure he doesn't become as great as he could become, because I'm going to avoid that fight that he could lose. And it might make him greater, but it'll smear his record, and the network won't put him on, and he won't make as much money. So I'm going to avoid that fight. But back in the day, you fought everyone because you knew by fighting everyone two things: you become a better fighter, and you would get other fights because you would show you at a certain level that they could depend on putting you in that level.
But I agree 100%. But people don't know that. They will see like a Henry Armstrong, and they'll see a Benny Leonard. They'll see the early losses, and they'll think, how can a guy lose 17 times?
But we just explained how.
Yeah, but
they need. That's why it's important for people like you, conveyors of knowledge, conveyors of history. Where like I said, Ring Magazine, any platform that's out there to convey this knowledge, this history. That's why they lost fights early.
Yeah,
they were put in tough early, and even more than that, Henry Armstrong, talking about the advantages, disadvantages, things that you have today you didn't have back then. Henry Armstrong lost some of his first fights because he was probably malnutrition. He hadn't eaten right. He didn't have money to eat a proper meal before a fight. I mean, there are factors involved in that era that they had to deal with that aren't involved today, that they don't have to deal with. And that's why people, again, the kids that in some ways are spoiled today, that are given the easier path, they can, when they run into an obstacle and they feel they're stopped, look back at the history, make yourself aware of the history of some of these great fighters, and gain from that, gain strength from that, gain knowledge from that.
Let's talk about Henry Armstrong, because I know you perceive Henry Armstrong as the greatest fighter that's ever lived. It's funny
I mean,
because
there's a couple. It's him and Sam Langford. You know, Harry Grabber's up there. I mean, there's a bunch of them. There's a lot of them, but definitely Henry Armstrong. Look, first of all, got the greatest fight nickname. You know, Homicide Hank.
yeah.
You know, you can't get much better than that. And he did things that could never be done in this era.
Mm.
But he won the featherweight. And forget no junior. You got to
Mm.
understand that. You got to make sure you qualify that. No junior titles. He won the lightweight, the featherweight, the lightweight, the welterweight title, right? Simultaneously within like a 3 month period. And then he went and won the middleweight title against Severino Garcia, but they robbed him. They made it a 15-round draw because he wouldn't do business with the fellas. So he really would have had
Mm.
four full weight classes, no in between, no junior where you can have 22 titles. You know, I mean that is extraordinary.
It's all about understanding context because people will say 4 divisions at the same time. That's impressive. But Adrian Broner was a 4 division champion. But that's today equivalent of 7 divisions all at
Well,
the
that's what
same
I'm
time.
saying. It's
Yeah.
that's why I qualified. I hope I made it clear that it wasn't junior titles. There was no. These were full
Mm.
titles, and back in the day when there was only like 8 world champions. In other words, you were really fighting the elite.
Mm.
Yeah, there wasn't 400 world champions. You know, I'm just using being a wise guy, using an arbitrary number, or 400 belts or 400 titles, because there's way too many today. You really did have the world champion. He was the best guy. It wasn't 5 best guys in one division or with one title: WBO, WBC, IBF, IBO, IB, CBS. You know, anti-ballistics. You know, it just gets out of control. Um, yeah, that history again, you would test it, and again, you were forged in a fire. You have to lose to win sometimes.
Mm.
You I used the phrase earlier that today it's a dead sentence if you lose. Like, oh my God, the network might not use it. Oh, you got to say, you got to have that glossy record. You have to have that sparkling undefeated record. If they would have that mentality back then, they wouldn't become the great fighters they became.
Yeah, yeah. And one of the things of those fighters, and what we don't get today, we sometimes get trilogies, but they would run it back 4, 5, 6, 7 times. They would fight each other constantly. They were in there all the time. And I think boxing misses that. And I look at someone like Sam Langford. We've just talked about Henry
Well, what
Armstrong.
you're talking about is rivalries, and it would make the sport healthier because fan bases get behind rivalries.
Yeah.
So if you had a fight that made sense, like you said, you know, we got a few today. There's rematches. We got a
But
rematch
look at the
coming up.
lightweights. They don't fight each other these days.
But I'm saying you got some trilogies today, but you don't have many of them.
Yeah.
But if you had more trilogies, more guys fighting 4 times, if it warranted it,
Mm.
and if it was that kind of competitive fight, again, you would build a fan base with the sport. The rivalries would just make the sport healthier.
Yeah.
Having those rivalries.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, Sam Langford boxed Harry Wills, what, like 20 times? Ridiculous levels of numbers. So, when we look at these old boys and these stories, what is the one that stands out to you as just the most amazing? Like, which fighter's story, their achievements that, for me, is Harry Greb or Langford, as I say, just the
Well,
way they
grab
were.
100 fights with one eye.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely incredible. And just moving straight up to heavyweight from middleweight, just beating everyone. 45-0 in 1 year alone in 1919. I think that was before he was blinded by Kid Norfolk. But what ones stand out to you in your mind? Like just from the top of your head.
Now, look, there's so many great stories too,
Mm.
and legendaries. I don't know if they're true, but I love them.
Yeah, the Willie Pep story.
All of them. I
Yeah.
mean, Willie Pep, he won a round without throwing a punch. Just you talk about ring generalship, just feint, defense, slick move, controlling everything, and he wins a round just without throwing a punch. Come on, I mean, that's like winning a gunfight without pulling your gun. I mean, how do you win a gunfight without pulling your gun out of your holster? But he won it. I saw it. I was there. He beat Billy the Kid, and he didn't even fire.
Yeah.
But he won it. I mean, it's stories like that for me demands that this history does get out there for you guys, for the young guys. And how about this story? The great Sam Langford. Uh, he's fighting. I don't want to get into the names and all of who it was. I think it might have been Fireman Flynn, but it don't matter. He's fighting a fight. It's a 40-round fight, and I mean, again, 40 rounds. I said it right. 4D, 40 round with a zero, and he's fighting a 40 round, which they did a lot of, and it's in an outdoor. They would build the arena sometimes. They would build it. They put the stands up, and then they would fill it up. The people would come, and the weigh-ins were the day off. So you had to deal with that too. They didn't have, X amount of days or hours, to rehydrate and get the nutrition back. The day off, and in some ways it was better because you purely had to be on that weight. You couldn't be fighting at a lower weight. Meanwhile, you're really 185 pounds. You're fighting at 160, and you make a crazy weight cut, and then you got a day and a half or whatever, and you put on. When you get in the ring, you're supposed to be 160 pounds, and meanwhile you're a cruiserweight. You know what I mean? When people say, "Oh my God, how did the guy? Geez, he put on 25 pounds." Yeah, because he didn't belong at that weight. But you had natural, really guys fighting at the natural weight because they had to weigh in the day off. So, and it's the biggest sport in the country back then. So here they are. You have the great Sam Langford, legendary guy, and he's fighting a fighter who was a top guy. I mean, if it was Fireman Flynn, he had knocked out the great Jack Dempsey, but that might have been
First round as well.
yeah. But who knows if it was legit? You had some of that stuff going on too. So who knows if that was really completely legit? But whoever the fight was, it don't matter. The story, the legend of the story is what matters. So here's the great Sam Langford. And so his opponent, who's a top opponent, top guy, he's fought top guys, but he's never fought Sam Langford. So he's a little bit in awe, even though he's an experienced guy. All these guys are tough guys. All these guys are experienced. We just put it out there. They all fought a lot of fights. They fought everybody. But he's fighting the legend, Sam Langford. So they weigh in, and now they're getting ready, and they're going out to their prospective corners. So they cross this way going out. 40-round fight. You know what they brought with them? They didn't bring just smelling salts and cotton and swabs and stuff like that for cuts, and water. No, no, no. They brought a crate of oranges. Pack your lunch. The real saying. Maybe that's where it came from. Bring your lunch because you're gonna be there all day. So they're coming out with their crate of oranges, 40 oranges. You're gonna you got 40 rounds. So here he is. You got the opponent going out there again, an experienced guy, a solid guy. He's going out there with a crate of oranges, right? There's Sam. There's the great Sam Langford walking out with 5. So the guy's a little nervous to begin with. How can you imagine how he's feeling? He looks over. He goes, "Sam, you miscounted. You only got 5 oranges." Sam Langford, without missing a step, says, "Only gonna need 5." Walks out there and knocks him out in the 5th. I mean, again, is it? I mean, how good is that? It's so good the cameraman started choking. You know what I mean? That's how good it is, right?
Yeah.
And you got to appreciate. Now, really, don't you appreciate this guy more? And I'm being serious. That he's going to bring you more of these stories, more of this history, really, more of this knowledge. You need to know it. You need to. You need to know it. You need to be able to tell your kids, really, about these men, how great they were.
It's funny, you're talking about these 40 rounders. Like I always tell these stories to people. Like people like 40 rounds. And like there was a guy called Joe Gans, great lightweight back in the day.
Of course.
Boxed the fellow Hall of Famer battling Nelson over 45 rounds. Tough fight, a proper brawl. One of the real tough fights. And then battling Nelson hits him low and is disqualified in the 42nd round. Can you imagine how gutted you would be?
No. And listen, how about in the area he's talking about where they fought on barges? How about that? Well, you find it's enough. People complain. They go on a cruise. They go, I felt a little queasy. The water got a little rough. I felt a little queasy. I need some Dramamine or whatever the hell they call that. Can I have a little Pepsi to settle my stomach? Settle your stomach. These guys are fighting on barges, fighting 20 rounds, 30 rounds on barges, moving. And you're talking about complaining about you need Dramamine because you're a little queasy. I mean, come on. I guess these guys would be watching the barge fight. They get queasy. I mean, and why that era? Because boxing was outlawed in certain states. So they still found a way to fight. They found that legally, if you fought on a barge, you're not fighting in that state. So you could fight. And how about, and again, he could teach you this, how about the newspaper decisions? Some of these fighters, we think, oh, he had 100, wow, he had 100. No, he had 300. What do you mean he had 310? He had 200 newspaper decisions because, again, boxing was outlawed in certain states, so they didn't have official decisions. So the local newspaper men would make the decision in the newspaper. So you have to go, if you're a historian, you have to go back and you have to count up all those fights, all those wins, all those decisions from the newspaper because they weren't tallied up by judges. And again, there were some of these great fighters. They did have 100 newspaper decisions.
Yeah. All of them of that era. I'd done a video. He said to me the other day he didn't know about the newspaper decisions. And you know, box rec. People go after box rec, and there's 100 fights, like you say, 300. But how do we get people to know this stuff? Because you're doing it, yeah. But why aren't the media doing this? That's my question.
Because they don't care about the sport enough. Because you know it's not on the end. It's you know, NFL is in with the corporations, corporately sponsored. You know, the NFL, the NBA, you know, MLB. They're corporately sponsored. They're on the end. They're the sport that you know is favored. You know, again, by the advertisers, by a lot of the advertisers, unfortunately, don't want to get involved in this sport because when they see some of the bad things, they say, "Oh no, we're not going to get involved with sponsorships, with advertisement." And then I shake my head and I say, have you guys been reading the newspapers about some of the people in the sports that you do advertise, you do sponsor? Have you read some of the horrific things that unfortunately can happen anywhere to people, especially people that are coming from nothing and they're trying to make it, and you give them credit and they're using that sport, you know, to try to catapult themselves, their families to get to a better place. But some of them still carry with them, you know, some of the baggage of where they come from. And sometimes it shows, and sometimes, unfortunately, it shows in a horrific way where you see examples of that. It's not, you know, it's not something that should be in any way tainting the whole sport where but it's in spots. You will have that. So when you have it in boxing, what? Everyone runs for the hills? Oh no, I don't want to. I don't want to sponsor, but you sponsor in other sports that has its ups and downs, has its problems too. But why do you feel the benefit of it? Because it's more publicly accepted, because it's more corporately accepted, and the money is there in you know, in those realms. That's the answer to your question, is, you know, that you don't have the networks. I mean, networks aren't doing boxing no more. You know, boxing's now, obviously, for a while now, has been relegated, you know, to all the what do you call television? What's the name of the TV that? No, I mean, I'm not just talking about the TV that we watch now, that for the most part that is on.
Well, like pay-per-view, you mean?
No, not just pay-per-view, but it's. I mean, it's not network TV anymore. There was a day where
you have to pay for a subscription to get that, rather than just having it on the telly.
Not just apps.
I get you.
Like ESPN, which is available to everyone. What is that, bud? That is, what do you call it?
Freeview?
No, there's a name. No, the ESPN is.
I get what you mean. Over here we got Sky. You need to pay to get to Sky.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of your package. Whatever.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, back in the day, what we consider real free TV, NBC, ABC, you know, CBS, it used to be available. The fights were on there Saturday afternoon, Wide World of Sports, Sunday afternoon, and another part of that was you were ready for that. You were expecting that, you know, where the family could sit down, where Saturday afternoon. Now it's, let's go watch the baseball game, the basketball game, the football game. But it used to be boxing. And that, again, to your question, that's what made the sport available to a broader audience. And we don't have that. We cable, that's the word I was looking. Everything is on cable now. Cable. You guys are here to help me, and you're not helping. And my son, even, and he's the greatest. He's always there. But
We'll chop that bit down.
Yeah. So no cable. Everything's on cable now, and now everything's even go to the apps, which is even more so.
It alienates the more casual viewer.
Yeah.
Yeah. But look, I'm gonna leave it there because I know you're mega busy. I really appreciate it, and it's great having you in boxing, and it's great having you linked with the Ring magazine, the illustrious Ring magazine that focus on these great fighters. And I was lucky enough to go to the events. And on the screen, you saw the likes of Abe Patel and Freddie Steele, all those old boys that no one knows. And yeah, I'm really, really hopeful that with Ring Magazine being back, with you being at the forefront, pioneering these old school guys and getting it out there. I was doing a podcast the other day about Sam Langford and Harry Greb. I got in my car, I saw your Ring Magazine. You said exactly the same thing I said 10 minutes earlier. Why does no one know Sam Langford and Harry Greb? I messaged Teddy, I was like, you'll never believe this. So listen, thank you very much. It's
How about Benny
pleasure.
Leonard?
Benny Leonard. Oh man, don't get me started on Benny Leonard.
I'm sorry.
No. Benny Leonard. Oh, Benny Leonard.
You know,
I said to you earlier that people say that they weren't as technical back in the day. Watch Benny Leonard
watch
again.
Benny Leonard.
He's old
in
then.
with any era.
Yeah,
You know, to the point we made and he just made, you know, that technically, you know,
unbelievable.
your argument falls short when you just look at a guy like Benny Leonard.
Tony Canzoneri too.
Tony Canzoneri is so underappreciated. Nobody knows who he is. You know how great he was.
Champion at 18.
Oh, geez.
Division.
I mean, and again, the guys we just mentioned. Then he mentioned Abe Patel. Who knows him? How many guys know him? These guys were all around at the same time fighting each other.
Yeah.
So it was, again, you thank me, I'm thanking you. Listen to this guy, will you please? Really, and spread the word. Spread the word about him. So the greatness of the sport, and more importantly than just the greatness of the sport, the greatness of these men their stories can be told. It's important to tell stories of people that overcame, that found a way to do something special, even when they might they might have at one time felt that they had no shot. They might have been born, and most of them were born into into terrible situations that they had to overcome, and they found ways to overcome. Learn their stories. It can only be helpful, and if not helpful to you, definitely enjoying to listen to. I mean, come on, you gotta love the Sam Langford story.
Cheers. You're the man. Love it. Thank you.